Let's do our clap. 3, 2, 1. Oh, I did it faster that time. I was hoping that you all were very mobile on your clap, that you could get it going without a whole lot of precursor. I have faith in you, quality, top-shelf podcasters.
I am neither fast nor mobile today.
This is Screamshare and Chill. My name is Kelley.
I'm Keith.
I'm Jamie.
And this week, it was my pick. And for our Screamshare and Thrill, we did, my pick was The Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere and that woman from Will and Grace. I forget her name. Debra Messing.
She's not in it very long, though.
Laura Linney's in it more. Will Patton. Directed by Mark Pellington. Edited by Brian Burden? Berdan? I don't know how you pronounce it, but yeah, something like that. If you're that concerned about it and you're really into editors of movies, you probably know how to pronounce it, in which case, oh well. What was it? Released in 2002? Didn't do so great in the box office. I guess it wasn't very well liked. I don't know if this was around the time that Richard Gere was falling out of public favor. But yeah, I digged it. I saw it on VHS back in the day. My girlfriend had gone out of town. She went to the Grand Cayman Islands for a week, and I had the whole week to myself. And I watched The Mothman Prophecies in a dark house by myself, and I was fucking freaked out for a few days. So it stuck with me.
Right.
Had you all seen this before?
I saw it, I think back on cable, like HBO or something, after it had come out in theaters. I'm curious what made you pick this, as you don't really gravitate towards horror movies on your own, it seems.
Yeah, well, if you think about my problem with horror movies is I don't like a lot of gore and I don't like a lot of jump scares. And this movie doesn't have a whole lot of either. There are a couple small jump scares, but
you don't know that until you see the movie, though. I'm saying, what made you pick this movie to watch?
Oh, the fact that it was when I had the VHS and it said something like based on true events or something like that. So anytime
they got you with that.
Yeah, like I'm more inclined to watch something that's really creepy if there's some kind of basis in reality for it, rather than Nightmare on Elm Street. That won't get me as much because nobody's saying that Freddy Krueger was a real thing that happened in some place in Illinois or wherever the fuck it takes place.
I mean, it was based on real events, just not the nightmares portion of it, but the rest of the story actually came from reality.
Really? I see. I didn't know that. And if Nightmare on Elm Street came out with that as part of their tagline, I don't know. Maybe teenage me would have gotten into it more. But I also remember that those movies, the Halloween, Freddy and Jason and all those movies, they came out more in the 80s when I was like a little kid. And as a little kid, my parents they didn't watch a lot of horror movies. They didn't expose me to horror movies a lot. So there wasn't a whole lot of reason why 7-year-old or 8-year-old me was going to seek out Jason, because that stuff is scary. So by the time I got to them, they were franchises. They weren't, ooh, check out this movie that could be a real event. It was, did you see Nightmare on Elm Street 17? Did you see Jason 7? That kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
And my answer to both of those is yes.
So, Jamie, had you seen The Mothman Prophecies before this?
Yes, I saw it once. I would say probably also when it came out on cable, because I am terrified of being stuck in a car in water. That's my biggest fear ever. So this movie scarred me for life.
Ooh, I can imagine. Yeah,
it had nothing to do with the scary parts.
Yeah, I often have the bridge out dreams where you're driving along and suddenly the bridge ends and you go off, and sometimes it's water and sometimes it's just road underneath or whatever. But that's a common recurring one for me.
Now, and here's the part of the irony of watching this movie now versus when it came out, is that when it came out in 2007, bridges collapsing and a bunch of cars falling into it was largely a thing of the past. It was something that was urban legend, urban myth, and nobody had seen a bridge collapse and hundreds of people plummet to their icy death. That just wasn't a thing that had happened since this movie's quote-unquote true events in 1960 whatever, or 1970 something. But nowadays, we just recently, what was it? A couple years ago, we saw that bridge collapse in Pittsburgh, or that's where it was, right?
Yep.
Pittsburgh? Yeah.
And there was one a few years before that in Minnesota.
See, I didn't know about the one in Minnesota, but yeah, like, ugh. And the area that we live in, that Jamie and I both live in, that town, there are bridges everywhere. There are 4 bridges in this town alone, and they're kind of smaller bridges. They're not real huge, but they're you could definitely fall into the river. And there are a couple bridges.
And we have had a bridge collapse here before both of our time, but it happened.
Yay!
Yay. Makes you wonder,
right?
Makes you wonder if there are any Mothman visitations before those recent collapses.
I will say that there are people in this town that it's common knowledge that this town is often visited by like UFOs and stuff like that. People talk about that stuff very openly. It's not even like a taboo topic. Like, and there are a lot of like salt of the earth type people that live around here. So I could go to a random bar to watch a friend play music, and you'll have people that are talking about like, you know, Donald Trump this and blah, 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 blah. And they'll say, hey, did you see that fucking UFO in your field last week? Yeah, it was pretty fucking, and they just openly talk about this shit. So like, I don't know. Maybe the otherworldly beings, whatever they happen to be, are drawn to areas of heavy population and water, especially, or how we traverse water. Maybe water is like a really weird concept for them, and they're like, "Ooh, look at them go! Look at them go! They're playing on the water again." I don't know.
As far as the movie goes, Richard Gere plays a Washington Post columnist named John Klein, and the movie opens...
Liberal news.
It's not funny!
Yeah, the liberal news media. Him and his wife are house hunting. They're a semi-youngish couple. You know, they're not in their elder years yet, and they're looking for a new house. And
house hunting like a couple of creeps?
Yeah.
Like, we need to have a conversation about consent, young lady and young man. You need to sit down here because what you're doing is a little pervy, okay?
And illegal.
Yeah, it's like, seriously, you could get the police called on you for like just taking off your clothes and fucking in a house that you were just looking at, and then letting your real estate and do it. Your real estate agent is right in the other room.
Hey,
what kind of relationship do you have with your real estate agent where you're fucking in the next?
They closed the door. You know, it's okay.
Yeah. The for sure security, a heavy. No way he could see through those slats in the fucking door.
Yeah, in the closet.
The slats that Michael Myers would take out with a single hand.
Yeah, right.
Slats.
Yeah. With everywhere else dark in the house except it's light in here. This is their open, eyes wide shut kind of like. It's a weird kink that they have going on, and I don't approve of it.
But we don't kink shame. We just kink ask why.
Indeed.
After their kinky little house searching orgy, they're drunk on love and driving down the street. She's driving when suddenly a darkened winged creature flies at the screen in the movie's like only jump scare, and it's pretty effective because it's so sudden and so like, I don't know, otherworldly looking, and it's only for a second, and it's accompanied with a loud noise and
a screech.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's effective. It's not overused, by the time it happens, and you maybe don't expect it so early in the film.
And you only get a glimpse of it. And throughout the movie, you see people are constantly drawing images of the Mothman or like whatever the entity that they saw. And it because you only saw it for a moment, as a viewer, you're like, yeah, that is kind of what it looked like. I can't really put my finger on exactly what it looked like. It was only there for a second. And it kind of creates this weird dynamic, at least it did in my brain, where you start thinking like the people that have drawn you. As soon as somebody starts drawing an image of the Mothman, you're like, oh, I know exactly what they're talking about because I saw it too for a second.
Right. And even though every drawing is different, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It reminds me of that early sort of uncanny AI art where it's not anything, but you can see like lots of everything in it. It's very, very strange looking.
Yeah, when they used to have the computers that would look like what it looks like on acid.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Like a bunny would turn into an eye and shit like that.
Yeah. It's just kind of mind breaking, which I guess is the point. So they did a good job with sort of an alien, unknowable shape being presented to you, and so that causes her to swerve, and she hits her head on the window. They go to the hospital.
Well, and to go back to that phenomenon, that's kind of something that we observe in humans, I'm pretty sure. Like, I won't be able to cite case or anything like that, but that humans, a lot of times, we want to make patterns out of things. So oftentimes when humans are faced with something that makes absolutely no sense, our brains kind of form an idea of something that we do understand around it, which will come into play later.
It's called matrixing.
Yeah. See, like, and that comes into play later on with the Indrid Cold story, when we start getting into the real life dynamics of what this is. At least some people would say. I mean, who knows? A lot of this could be a lot of different phenomena. I'm not here saying like, oh my God, the Mothman is real, so lock up your kids, lock up your wife kind of thing. I don't know. She's
in the hospital and he's sitting there waiting to see what happens, and she asks him, "You didn't see it?" And he's kind of perplexed, like, see what? And what makes her actually get the is that what makes her get the brain scan? Because she's like, I saw something. They just do it. It was like because of her injury.
Head injury.
Yeah.
Yep. As somebody who had a head injury like that, yep, that's what got it.
Yep. They, according to the story, at least according to what the medical science says of the time, yeah, she already had the brain tumor. This just, in a way that kind of like got them to find out about it so they could start treating it. Otherwise it would have just, who knows.
Right. So the obvious path you can take is that, the brain tumor caused her to see this, as brain tumors can do. And,
yep.
That's what brought this whole thing on.
And we don't know for sure until chapstick.
Yeah. That's a creepy conversation. We'll
Yeah, oh yeah. That's one of the creepiest scenes in the whole movie. Yeah.
But so she herself is sketching the Mothman, and the husband, Richard Gere, finds this out when he makes it to the hospital a little too late after she succumbs to her condition. The orderly is there, and he says she knew it was time. She was drawing angels, and I get why that's there for the movie to like make him look in the book, but hey, buddy, what kind of angels have you been seeing? Because those are monsters. That's the...
What the hell is even that?
Right?
It's like, I don't want to see those kind of angels when I'm dying.
That orderly, maybe it's just me, but that orderly seems a little off anyways. So I always took it that the orderly was a little bit more connected to the other side, or a little more open to those kind of suggestions. So even when he says she was drawing angels, it was like... don't they even show, like, later on, he, like, thinks back to it and the orderly isn't even there or something? I feel like they show a shot where it's that same hallway shot, but the orderly is absent. No, they do a lot of visual, like, recall, and in this movie, the way it is like, when he goes to the power plant, there's a gaping hole in the wall that has been destroyed, and when he's looking at it, he's recalling the conversation he has with the orderly, and the way the orderly is leaning against the wall, he fits perfectly in that hole in the wall.
Yeah, okay.
Little shit like that, where it's like the visuals almost bring him back, and you can see it how he could see it in his mind, kind of thing. Yeah, but yeah, I always took it as the orderly was a little bit off, and that's why when he said she was drawing angels, like there's a little bit of he's got his eyebrow raised, where he's not being 100% literal. He's saying, look at the page. There's something you need to see there. I've always wondered if that guy was like somehow connected to, like, was that Indrid Cold wearing a different face or that kind of thing?
Yeah. I do want to mention, so his wife is named Mary, and just the sort of vibes of this movie and the haunting opening credits music that's going on, a lot of similarities to the Silent Hill video games I pick up from this. If we're not worried about a copyright strike, we can sample a little bit of the opening song from this movie and put it against this sort of well-known Silent Hill song. Also, Silent Hill generally is about a guy whose wife, Silent Hill 2 at least, a guy who goes to a weird town to investigate it after his wife Mary has died, but he gets a letter from her and sees a double of her in town. There's just weird coincidental, it's like this vibe was just in the air, because they came out, I think Silent Hill came out in 2001, Silent Hill 2 came out in 2001, I think. and this is 2002, so they were like being made at the same time. I always find shit like that really interesting.
I find it interesting that you saw Silent Hill in it, because what I saw was Red Shoe Diaries in that opening.
I can totally see it.
I was like, what kind of movie are we watching here again? I was a little confused, other than I had seen it already. It was very cable TV, late night 90s.
HBO After Dark.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I was a teenager in the 90s. That was in some parts of my life, that was the extent of my love life, was HBO After Hours.
In Silent Hill 1, the main character befriends a blonde female police officer as one of the main characters also, so it's got even that going for it. It's just, I just wanted to point it out because it sort of jumped out at me. I played a lot of those Silent Hill games, and I really, really felt the sort of vibe connection.
One glaring difference is no pyramid head.
No pyramid head.
Maybe there could have been.
No undead monsters.
You don't know. You never really see what Indrid Cold looks like.
No sexy nurses either.
Wait, which one didn't have the sexy nurse? Because we were just talking about that earlier.
Well, I guess to each their own, you know.
Yeah, you know, he was a handsome guy. Most people in movies are usually pretty attractive.
Sure, I won't fault
not
his...
everybody is. I
won't fault.
Not everybody is a funny-looking fella.
My dark thought here was: do you get the earnest money back if the wife has brain cancer?
Do you get what?
Yeah, what? Say that again.
The earnest money deposit back. So when you buy a house,
oh right, yeah.
When you want a house, when you sign on contract, you put down money. Do you get that back if the wife has brain cancer? That's my question.
Yeah, he probably needed all the money he could get to sort of pay for all that, because I'm sure that was not a cheap hospital bill.
Right.
No. Yeah.
This movie it's pretty well directed. There's a shot, the first one that I wrote down that really stood out to me with the camera techniques is shortly after this we see Richard Gere sitting in a park, sort of distraught, and there's like a shaky POV cam coming up behind him that makes you feel like, you know, there's something is rushing towards him, and it's moving frenetically, but then it cuts to a completely solid front cam shot of him, and that kind of stuff is throughout the whole movie, and it really says that, you know, it's a choice that's being made, you know, to cut from the
something
shaky
is
cam.
watching him.
Yeah, right.
That's the whole idea of the movie, is you're always seeing him from like candid angles, and the camera sometimes from far away, but always focused directly on him, even though it's a wide angle lens. And somehow the way they do it, and the masterful use of camera, in my opinion, it doesn't feel like, every movie always has the main character somewhere in the center of the screen, but this movie does it in a way where I feel like I'm watching him. I feel like I'm a voyeur looking in on his life, and I shouldn't be. It puts you almost in the eyes of the antagonist, I guess. And constantly you see eyes happening everywhere.
Yes.
Even early on when she's driving, you see the two red lights of the car in front of her, and they make it blurry to the point where it almost looks like two eyes looking at her. And that's a common theme throughout the entire movie, is two red lights that form the image of eyes looking at you.
Yeah, I loved looking for that stuff.
If this movie gets in your psyche, you start seeing it everywhere in real life. Like driving down a foggy road and you come up to a normal stoplight that has two red lights, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, is the Mothman here? Is he watching me? Is a horrible thing about to happen?
It also, there's a lot of like tracking shots where it looks like you're flying over the city, over around him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like subliminal flying messaging.
And coupled with extreme close-ups to like, and it shows that like it's all a matter of perspective. And even though the scientist character is not one of my favorite characters in the show, which we'll get to that eventually, it really leans into his idea, his thought that it's all a matter of perspective, that the Mothman just has a different view than you do. One of the phrases that he says when he finds out that his wife is ill, I think this is early on when he says it, is it's like the universe looks and says, ah, there you are, a happy couple. Yeah. I've been looking for you.
Yes.
And I'm like, how many times in my life that's part of why this movie resonated with me early on, is how many times in my life that things almost feel like that, where like things are going really well, like your relationship is going well, your job is going well, your house is going well, your dogs are happy and healthy, and in the back of your mind you're going, the universe is just waiting to pounce on me. Something bad is about to happen and I fucking know it. And he calls it like afterwards, he says what we all think, like, I fucking knew it. Things couldn't stay good forever. Something had to fucking happen.
Right, yeah.
Oh, it's one of those lines.
As a sufferer of anxiety, I get that 100%. Mm-hmm. I kind of always feel like I'm trying to hide myself from please don't see me universe is like how it feels.
Yeah.
Well, and there's so many superstitions too, like throughout the world that are like, don't ever seem too happy, you know, make sure that there's bad work in your good work when you're creating something so that the universe doesn't get jealous of you or that people don't get jealous of you. And
you don't want to get too popular. You don't want to be too good at what you're doing because then and we see it, how many times we see it happen over and over again. But then again, we do see a lot of rich and famous people just getting away with whatever the fuck they want because it doesn't matter because they have money. Anyway.
Right.
So you're saying
every superstition through like every society throughout history.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, who knows, there might be a psychological reason why that happens. Maybe it's the whole knowing that we're going to die someday and we realize the impermanence of everything in life. And that makes us think that, okay, this happiness is going to pass too. Yada, yada. Who knows? Yeah, we're getting philosophical. Oh my God, it's getting so deep in here.
Back to that human need to find meaning in patterns and everything. That yes, something eventually bad is going to happen because that's life. And yes, it's probably going to follow when there's been a bunch of good things. It's going to stick out a little more when there's something bad that happens.
Yep.
Yeah, so we jump 2 years later, and he is on his way through Richmond, Virginia from Washington to interview the governor the next day. And his car breaks down. You know, it's nighttime. He's on a Virginia road, but it breaks down in a very weird way. It's almost like an EMP hits his car. Like all the electronics stop. It's just like completely dead.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is totally a marker of the times that he's trying to make a phone call, it's not working, so he starts banging on his cell phone. I'm like, that's very boomer of you. Go ahead and bang on your cell phone. I can't imagine somebody walking down the street and banging on the side of their iPhone to get it to work. It's like, and it's so small that you think you would see it at some point, but no, it's a changing of the times. We realize now that banging on electronics does not make them work better. It did once upon a time, but not anymore.
It makes you feel better.
It does. That helps.
And I'd like to point out, too, that a lot of these scenes, like even early on when it shows him like going through his wife's death, and then we see that time jump and we see him driving from, I would assume, Washington, D.C. to Point Pleasant. These scenes could be long and boring as hell, and what keeps them interesting is the fucking music and cinematography. Like, the scenes are beautiful, the camera use is interesting, and the music is fucking kick-ass. And that's part of what makes this movie so wonderful to me. I love movies like this that are like David Fincher movies, like Fight Club and stuff like that, where the music feels like it was designed in time with the beats on screen. Like, people are walking to the beat of the music. The scene is cut right when the expression changes. Things like that really work super well, and this movie has that in spades. Substance might not be 100% a lot of times, but the cinematography, music, and editing are spot on. This combo, they work really well together, in my opinion. And then makes these scenes more interesting. Otherwise, everything we've seen so far is kind of boring, but it's cool.
This is where it gets interesting to me, because this is where we meet Gordon. So he goes to the nearest house since he's broken down and his cell phone won't work, and knocks on the door and asks to use the phone. And the guy pulls a fucking gun on him, and he's like, it's you again, and basically iterates that he's been doing that the past 3 nights, I believe is the claim, or that's the third consecutive night that he's shown up at his door asking to use the
religious
phone.
iconography, everything in threes.
At 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and that's when we meet Connie, the female police officer who is called, and sort of diffuses the situation.
Well, hey there, Gordon. I just love the way she says that. She comes in the room. He's got a man holed up in his fucking bathtub with a shotgun pointed at him. The cop walks in and says, well, hey there, Gordon. What you doing?
Yeah, that's
just trying to diffuse it, and I appreciate that. But it's so casual for such a violent situation.
But I mean,
her face does a really great job of like communicating that this is kind of dire and crazy.
Yeah. But also imagine being in Gordon's position. Like, if this has happened 3 nights in a row now, like, I kind of get it. Like, who the fuck is this guy? You know?
Like, yeah, like, I'm not shooting him. I'm not hurting him, but I need answers to what's going on. And even him saying, like, I don't drink anymore, so it's not like I'm not hungover, I'm not drunk, I'm not stoned. There's nothing going on in my life except for you showing up out of nowhere 3 nights in a row. This is fucking weird. So you stand here until the police get here. So even though we think Gordon is a fucking weirdo and violent and stuff like that, once we understand what's going on, we kind of see that Gordon is pretty fucking sane, and he's doing things how I would hope that a lot of us would be handling the situation if we were there. Like, don't run away from it, confront it, get your answers, don't hurt anybody. He's just asking questions, but he's protecting his family, that kind of thing, you know?
Sure. I get it.
Look, if you're disrupting my sleep 3 nights in a row, I'm probably shooting.
Yeah, like, I would think that even if I were John in that kind of situation, we do see it in John a little bit later, that like he's very understanding. Like, listen, man, I get it. I understand why that would freak me out too. So hey, I didn't mean it. As far as I know, this is the first time I've been here.
And so he goes to check into a hotel after the situation gets resolved, and comes to find out that he is in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, hundreds of miles away from where his traveling route was supposed to be, and he has no idea how he got that far off track.
Yeah, so like I was debating whether or not to bring this up at the end of our pod about what parts of this story are real and what parts are not. And I'd like to point out that the reporter driving from Washington, D.C. and ending up hundreds of miles off his path is completely fabricated. It's one of those that has nothing to do with the quote-unquote real events of the situation. The first time I watched it, and I was assuming that this was a real story, I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking weird. Like, how has somebody not looked into this? Blah, 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 blah. Here I am later in life, and when that happens, I'm like, yeah. Okay. And I don't know why. Like, when we watched Dr. Sleep a few weeks ago, like, I didn't sit here going, well, this isn't a real story, so it doesn't matter. But there's something in my brain where it's like, no, but if this is based on a real story, I want to cut all the fluff and I want to see the stuff that was real, like what really happened. But I don't know. It's for a movie, so whatever. I'm just figured it's good to point it out a little bit as we go.
It wouldn't be nearly interesting enough to make a movie out of it if they kept right to the facts.
I don't know if they really got into, like, but they would have had to spend a lot of the movie focused on the actual, like, eyewitness accounts of what happened. Spend more time on the Indrid Cold character, that kind of stuff. I think you could make it, but the whole movie would have to be a little bit shorter than what the movie we watched is. And that's part of my my complaint, is that I feel this movie, in adding a bunch of fluff to make it more Hollywood, it ended up creating a story that was just a little bit too long in places. And if they would have stuck to the source material a little bit more and cut a little fat, and this could have been an amazing 1:40 movie. Instead, it was a pretty good, and I don't want to give away my rating yet, a long movie. So
there's a scene after the police station where he's talking to Gordon, and he gets so fucking close to him to talk to him. It's
I would have pushed him away if I was Gordon.
Really.
Like, what the fuck, man? Like, I just had my gun pulled on you, telling you not to come around my property, and now you look like you're about to fucking lick my neck. Yeah. What are you doing? Why are you so close to my face, bro?
Yeah, I had to note that because it's just like, get the fuck out of my space, dude. Like,
I literally would have pushed him back and said, what the fuck is your problem, man? Oh my God. Well, one thing I think is funny in that conversation so John tells him, like, I got this phone call and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. He says, I wasn't supposed to be here. I don't know how I got to this town. And Gordon says, and you call me crazy? And as the audience, I'm going, no, he didn't. Nobody called you crazy, Gordon. Like, right. You call me crazy? No, not a single person has said that. So the answer is no.
Feel like
no,
you're feeling a little crazy.
Yeah, it sounds like paranoia. That's a projection right there, buddy. You feel crazy. Don't put that on me. Don't give me those bad vibes. I didn't call you that.
So he finds out from Connie that a lot of people in the town have been reporting seeing the Mothman and making drawings similar to his wife's drawing.
And this is the true story. This is what really happened in Point Pleasant, was that, and according to the book written by John Keel, which he's supposed to be like kind of like the reporter in this story.
Well, he's both. It's kind of interesting the way they did this for a movie. So I wanted to talk about this, so we'll do it now. The author of the book is split into Richard Gere's character and the professor that he goes to talk to about the occurrences that's happening.
Which, in my opinion, the professor could have just taken a fucking leap out of this story. But that's just my opinion.
Well, the reason it makes sense is because you need someone else to help convince the same character into the point of belief. Because then, if not, it's just the character convincing himself, and that makes him unreliable and possibly a crazy person.
Well, I mean, you could have done it through a preponderance of evidence. You could have had it where, like, so John doesn't believe in this Mothman stuff, and then eventually he starts getting, like, so you could have combined the Indrid Cold appearance with John Keel, and that would have drawn the entire story together. And that's how I would have rewritten the story. So John Keel goes around town and he sees hundreds of people, or 100 or more people, saying the same thing and having the same eyewitness accounts. And he goes around and interviews them, and we see him being really skeptic of the whole thing, and he doesn't believe anything at face value, but he's hearing them out because this is like a mass delusion is maybe what he's considering it. Then all of a sudden he runs into one of the eyewitness accounts of somebody that talks about Indrid Cold, and then he goes and the guy says, Indrid Cold would like to meet you, and so he goes to meet Indrid Cold, and that's where we have. And that's the person that changes John's opinion. For all intents and purposes, from an audience point of view, that could be just a man, but there's something a little bit off about him. And then he starts exhibiting evidence that he has foresight into things that he shouldn't. And he doesn't understand human concepts the same way that all of us understand them. And next thing you know, now John is a believer, or maybe he's still teetering on the edge of believing. And then the bridge collapses. And then at the end, we see, oh my God, it was real, or something like that. And that's how you end the movie. And like, oh my God, that's such a fucking cool movie. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, but see, to me, that takes a little bit of the mystery away. Having a face-to-face with Indrid Cold would take away some of the, I don't know, alien nature of him.
And it's just a different way of looking at it. Like that, the story I'm telling would have been closer to the real events.
Right.
Quote unquote, the real events. So I don't know. And that's the story that I found interesting.
It comes down to do you let the imagination work, or do you show the monster?
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and you could have done the conversation with Indrid Cold over the phone the same way we did it here, so you didn't have a face-to-face and he had a creepy voice, so it sounds kind of human. He can even go back to the lab and them saying, no, this isn't a human voice, this was not made with human vocal cords, that kind of stuff. You can keep a lot of those beats, just, you know, I don't know.
I really
it's
like...
It's fine. I just, the scientists, that whole thing, the latter third of the story, it just seems to drag. Once Gordon dies, until the bridge collapse, a lot of that is fluff, in my opinion, and I don't get into it as much.
I would agree.
Yeah. I do like Connie's dream. The police officer tells him, because it's such a dream-ass dream, where she says that she's floating in the water, and there's lights from beneath, and when she makes presents floating around like Christmas presents or whatever,
seems so abstract and not based in reality. Like this, how could this ever come true? This is obviously just a weird dream, you know?
Right, and that comes into play later, as we know. But it just seems like so very weird. And the wake up number 37 is the voice that she hears.
I knew I was dying, and then I heard this voice like somebody whispering in my ear. Wake up, number 37. Wake up, number 37. Wake up. And then I woke up. What do you think that means?
There's another scene that they just cut to, which is kind of jarring, or I guess John, the Richard Gere character, is in a pawn shop, it looks like. I think he's buying some of his recording equipment. Yeah. And Gordon just walks up and strikes an immediate conversation. And I'm just like, how did you find him in this pawn shop, Gordon?
Well, small town.
Yeah.
You see his car parked out front. You've gotten to know his car pretty well.
I mean,
you look in the windoes and you see him in there.
Yeah, I guess.
I've lived in a small town. I get it.
It's not a real critique.
The random people talking about the new guy did you see that new guy that's been around lately? He just walked into the pawn shop.
Yeah, that happened all the time. I would go into the party store at the small town and somebody say, "Hey, were you looking for Jimmy? I saw him. He went down to the bar across the street. I think he might still be over there." That kind of thing.
But yeah, it's an important conversation, and it's not a real critique, but it's just like, it almost smash cuts to it, and they're just like he like walks up and they start talking.
He's repaying him for personal space bubble violation.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, did you like it when you got in my face? Well, hey, how you doing, buddy? What's going on?
I'm glad that they didn't draw that out more, because this already is a long movie, but it's just I noticed it. It's like a sudden jump. But that it's an important conversation, because Gordon tells that he's heard voices coming from his sink saying that in Denver 99 will die.
Think about that sentence. I heard voices coming out of my sink. Okay, well, the next step is you got to go see a psychiatrist. We need to.
Yep.
There's a word that we want to discuss called schizophrenia, and there's nothing wrong with it. There are a lot of ways that you can manage this in your life,
but I really love the scene that sets
even
up.
Coming from John's point of view, like, okay, let's get you to a bigger hospital, maybe with more up-to-date scanning equipment, and have another look.
The scene that sets up, I really, really love, where they're in the diner talking, and suddenly across the diner on the TV, the news report of the airplane crash in Denver that killed all 99 passengers. And Richard Gere just walks over to the TV and like turns it up, and the look that he gives Gordon, like nothing is said, but it's a very chilling, like, how do you fucking explain that one, buddy? You know? Yeah.
Right.
Very, very tight, sort of fraught scene. I love the mood that it instills. It's like he's starting to believe, is kind of the territory we've entered.
And this movie is really a great study on facial acting as opposed to voice acting.
Sure.
There's a lot of it.
It's a great combo because it's done with the face, the facial acting. It's done with the music, the slight zoom in with the camera on people's faces, and the editing timed really well. Like there are a lot of scenes in this movie where it is elevated well beyond where it should be, just because it depends on how you look at it, because I guess it wasn't very well liked, so maybe it wasn't elevated. Maybe we're the weird ones, and most people watch this movie and they're like, eh.
There's also like they give us it's a very blue collar working town. I think there's a part when Gordon says I was just driving past the chemical plant down by the cement plant.
Yeah. As you do. I was visiting the old chemical plant. Had to do some fishing. All the fish there are great. They got extra fins.
Over there by the refinery, everything clustered together. Which I know it's like that, but it was just a funny sentence to say. I was driving by the chemical plant, which is over by the cement factory or whatever. It's like we get it, buddy. You're a blue collar worker
in a blue collar town.
I was wearing my overalls, driving my pickup truck, listening to some country
with my dog in the passenger seat
while I was thinking good thoughts about Donald Trump
and a gun on the rack.
Yeah. We know who Gordon would have voted for.
Well, nobody.
I mean, yeah, R.I.P. Gordon. But
by the time Trump came around, he's dead.
Let's talk about the Indrid Cold conversation, because it's one of the best parts of the whole revealing to you that I have some kind of foresight. I see more than a human can see. And
that Indrid Cold conversation is one of the best scenes in the whole fucking movie. Yes, fucking,
it is.
That sent chills down that whole conversation.
Hello, John Clark.
Who is this?
My name is Indrid Cold.
His voice sounds uncanny. You talk about the uncanny valley with visuals, but they make the voice uncanny. It sounds almost like it's underwater or something. It's very like wavery. I don't know. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I heard somewhere that I was trying to look up the facts so I could quote it exactly, but in order to create the voice effect, they added a voice filter that was run through a couple of different animals, which one was a tiger and another one was a cluster of bees. And they were just trying to find noises that would be subliminally off-putting to human ears, that for ancient reasons we would not want to hear these noises. And I'm like, they did it really well. I don't know exactly what their process was, but the Indrid Cold's voice is creepy as fuck. And which I don't know if we'll get into now. It's up to y'all if we want to wait until after. But Indrid Cold as one of the cryptid characters that surround the quote unquote real version of this story is one of the more compelling parts. In a lot of ways, Indrid Cold is more compelling of a story than the Mothman. And according to what we see, they are separate entities. From what we gather, from what the book tells, at least, the John Keel book, Indrid Cold and the Mothman just happened to be in the same place at the same time. They were not the same entity.
Right. And the movie kind of makes it feel like they are.
Which, if you add that element to this story, that makes it a little bit even creepier. Yeah, the movie makes it feel like they are, but now imagine watching the story from the point of view that Indrid Cold and the Mothman are not the same person or entity.
Yeah, Indrid Cold is like just preaching about the entity or whatever.
Indrid Cold is more your ally in this situation than the Mothman. The Mothman is just purely an observer, I guess, because the Mothman doesn't cause the thing.
Yeah, he's the herald, right? The herald of the old god or whatever, that sort of.
Oh, and I got into some Reddit comments and some blog posts that, oh my God, friends, this rabbit hole goes deep.
I bet it does.
We'll touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, the Indrid Cold conversation is interesting in a lot of ways. If we're just looking at the in-universe, that conversation proves to John that this is real because for example, they brought up earlier the chapstick.
Mm-hmm.
What's my chapstick?
The way that the sound fades in and kind of lingers on the air afterwards, sounds all ethereal, and it was that conversation convinces John finally that this is real, and now he and Gordon are both on the same page.
Yes, because he is able to tell what he's holding in his hand with it stuffed inside a drawer with his curtains drawn in his hotel room. What's in my hand? Chapstick.
Mm-hmm.
It's
what's the line from the book on page 56?
And he still runs and looks out the window.
Yeah. And it also it takes him back to the audio lab right afterwards.
Yes,
which that audio lab cracked me up.
Me too. I have
okay, you probably have a similar idea.
Let me say my note first, because they show the audio lab. He's getting the voice analyzed, and they show this overhead shot of them talking. And there's one guy off doing the Tibetan bowl ringing. And my thought is they're having this conversation about what the fuck this is and how is this voice possible, and just, can you do that outside, buddy?
Mom says it's too windy.
Do you have to put your computer in the center of the sound studio? Oh my God. And it felt like the people that did the set design for this movie, they're just find everything that has to do with sound design and put it all in the same room. I don't know a single sound studio that is a professionally made studio where they have the computer and the switchboard and all that in the fucking recording studio.
Right.
No, you put that out of the room so that you don't hear the fans of the computer. You don't hear the click, click, clack of the fucking keyboard and all that shit. That's why you move that in a different room.
Wow.
Yeah, and the whole point of filling water glasses and trying to make noise by rubbing the rim of it was that's so obscure. Why are they doing testing right now? In which case, why do they have all this shit in here? Get all this shit out of here.
Right.
We're recording and doing testing. We need everything out of the room.
We're literally, we're talking. It's your sound samples are worthless because we're having a somewhat heated conversation about the nature of this voice.
Mm-hmm.
I like what the other half of the author's personality that was split, Alexander Leek, what he tells him about entities all around us. It's a very good way to sort of maybe think about unexplainable things. He compares them to microwaves and radio waves that are there's things all around us that we can't see that have very tangible effects.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because who's to say there isn't, and actually people say there is a whole membrane universe where the entities that we are not aware of are constantly surrounding us. And it's,
I just imagine if John Keel was a complete moron and he's it's a lot of things that are unseen all around us, like microwaves. And John's so you're saying we can cook with the Mothman? No, that's not at all what I'm saying, John. I'm saying that they could be anywhere, like in my pants. Well, possibly, but you're getting distracted.
I'm pretty sure that's the Mel Brooks version.
My wife's been dead a long time. I'm very lonely.
Why do you do this?
And also, Gordon says something that's very similar to sleep paralysis. where he's, you know, laying in his bed and he's seeing the entity or whatever.
I don't know, man. Like, that's part of what's creepy about some of these movies, and what's creepy about like some metaphysical shit. Like, I'm a fairly skeptic person. I'm not religious. I don't buy into a lot of like weird conspiracy theories and stuff like that, which I guess what you consider a weird conspiracy theory is what other people consider truth and yada yada. But these stories that kind of combine a lot of different phenomenon that we have noticed in human history, at least the stories of them popping up, those are the most compelling to me. Like, what if a lot of these things are just different manifestations of the same otherworldly phenomenon? Like, what if ghosts were not ghosts as we think of them? They weren't like dead humans, but they were just entities from another dimension that phased into our reality, and you're seeing a glimpse of them living. That's why you can't interact with them, because they can't really see you either. What if that is the same as these Tic Tac UFOs these UFOs that we're seeing everywhere? Like, if they're somehow connected. What if, like, religions, a lot of like strange off-worldly religions and people that have seen all these different encounters, what if Bigfoot, all these things, what if they're all kind of weirdly connected?
I want to know what the hell is going on. What the hell is going on? Evidence. What the hell is going on? Are you questioning the validity of my plan? Evidence. You don't know what any of this is about, do you?
So having the connected to like a sleep paralysis, the Man in the Hat, which if anybody is familiar with that phenomenon, ooh, that's creepy.
Sure am.
Let's just say that I have seen the Man in the Hat before, and that's mine
was in a wolf form. While I had my one instance was sleep paralysis, but it was still had like red glowing eyes and was terrifying.
And it's weird that people that bring up the Man in the Hat, like the person that I discussed things with, or that I interacted with, they didn't have a hat on. But as soon as somebody said, "Have you seen the Man in the Hat?" I knew exactly who the fuck they were talking about. Oh, that was a creepy moment in itself. But anyways, go ahead. I might cut this out if I don't want to sound too much like a crackpot. Next time on Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Serious crap. It's not funny.
Before we get too far ahead, and because Jamie had mentioned face acting, and these are a couple of the scariest parts that we just talked about. Richard Gere does a pretty solid job of face acting, like real fear at some of these revelations. Mm-hmm. It's not like gasping, "Oh my god!" It's like tight-lipped, white face. You know.
Yeah.
You can tell he's probably clenching hard enough to just fire that gerbil right out of there.
Well, that certainly calls for a dirty.
We had to fit some form of animal love into the podcast, right?
Of course.
Can you picture that?
Oh, God.
Interspecies erotica, once again.
It just flies against the wall. You see the gerbil slide down facing the camera. One eye bigger than the other. He's never going to live that down. I don't even know if there's any basis in reality.
Me neither, but it's just attached to him like an albatross. That's
those that might not be aware, there was an urban legend or myth or whatever going around in like the 90s that Richard Gere he got arrested for putting a gerbil up his ass for sexual gratification purposes.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if that's true or not. Please don't sue us, Mr. Gere.
Can expect to Lemmy winks and.
No, I mean, I don't know. I guess he could sue us. That'd probably be the most publicity we've ever had as a podcast. Local podcast gets sued for.
I mean, he can't sue us for saying that it was a urban legend. He can sue us if we say that it absolutely happened. And we are not saying that it absolutely happened.
Yeah, like I didn't say I saw the gerbil in his ass.
Yeah. Which it did. You know, we all know that was true.
I saw the gerbil in his ass.
It absolutely happened.
All right, moving on.
You talked about the last third of this movie being kind of or the middle to last third or something being kind of a drag, and you know it is, but it does a good job of being disorienting. Like you're on the what to believe sort of path with Richard Gere. I feel like
during a lull where nothing is happening, no new evidence is really presenting itself. He just has to live with the idea that this happened before and something new is going to happen soon.
Yeah, and that's when a lot of the voyeur shots and the flight shots are happening, just like as he's dealing with some new reveal or whatever. And so I will say that it's effective at being disorienting.
And maybe it was more fun the first time I watched it, but coming back to it after seeing it before, that last third just, it drags. Like the Point Pleasant scene, the scene where he goes back home to talk to Mary on the phone, that's okay. Like the fact that she pulls him away from his obsession, which in my opinion, that's kind of the moral lesson that the movie is trying to teach you, is to let things go and don't be too obsessed with anything. Because no matter what the subject is, if you get too obsessed with it, it can rule your life and ruin your life because of it. But yeah, from the moment that he lets the obsession,
if you become too focused, you miss out on the bigger pictures.
Yeah, like you would miss out on the potential meeting Connie and having a good relationship with her, whether it's romantic or friendship or whatever, the friendship that you could have formed with Gordon and his family even, that last part where he starts to deal with Mary's phone call and then he comes back to Point Pleasant and then the bridge collapse, that is all great. That is a wonderful fucking ending to the movie. So like it pulls you back in before it ends, but I don't know, the half hour or so before that, it just kind of meanders. And unfortunately, like that's where that part starts with him having the conversation with the scientist in Chicago. And that's why I'm kind of maligned against him a bit, because that I after seeing it a few times, I know that once the scientist shows up, the movie kind of gets boring for a little bit. But the first time, who knows? It might have worked really well. Like if you had never seen it before, and maybe that's why I enjoyed this movie so much, because that middle linger, like there is, I imagine for somebody that is into ufology or cryptology or anything like that there are large moments of your quote unquote research that are spent just, and I hate to put the quote end quotes there. Maybe maybe some of them are truly doing a lot of valid scientific research. And there are moments where you're not getting any evidence. You're not getting any data to really support any hypothesis or to negate any hypothesis. It's just in a holding pattern. And how do you keep your passion alive when things aren't, like any artistic endeavor, even doing this podcast, for example, there are weeks where like we're tired and we don't feel like recording, or there are weeks that I don't feel like doing the editing. And how do you get through that? You've got to have passion for the thing you're doing. And that's where we see his passion borderline on obsession. And that's where it rules his life.
His passion also seems to be big naturals, because that picture of his wife that he's always got looking at has some like major cleavage. I don't know if you guys.
Whoa, no, I didn't know Debra Messing was known for her big natural.
Just go if you have a chance.
Hold on, don't worry. I got a few ideas of what I can Google right now. Don't worry. You filled my head with some good search engine terms.
But no, like look at that picture. There's like major cleavage. It just stood out and jumped out. It's like that's
Debra Messing.
I guess that's
big naturals. Maybe that's the name of the episode. Debra Messing's Big Naturals.
That is gonna be AI. That is gonna be AI.
But it's like that's the picture of your wife that you have to. I mean, I get it. You love your wife. You're attracted to your wife. Hopefully,
he's just being efficient. He's got some that have her face where she looks pretty. He's got some that have her body in more suggestive ways, and he just has this one, which it's an all-purpose. This is the one he takes on the road. When he's at home, he has different photo collections depending on the mood he wants.
And I'm sure it's because of her position, because she's like laying on her side or whatever. But they keep showing it, and they keep showing close-ups of it, and I had to make a note of it.
I got to tell you, I did the search for Debra Messing Big Naturals, and I'm a little
disappointed.
It's not coming up with, I don't want to say disappointed, because all body types are valid. Small breasts are totally fine, but I wouldn't call him honking. Let's just say that.
Look at the picture from the movie. You'll see what I'm talking about. Everybody, as you watch the movie, pay close attention, and you will see.
I'm trying to find a Google search with the picture from the movie, and I'm not finding it.
You'd probably
have the picture that I see. She's not. You can't even see past her collarbone.
That's not true. I didn't make this up. I promise.
Sure, Jan.
Well, here's. I'm going to link the picture in chat. This is the picture that I think you may have kind of invented some boobies there, buddy. Like, I just linked it in our podcast.
No, it's absolutely not. That's not the picture that he had up on the mirror. No, that's not it.
On the mirror?
Yeah,
okay.
in the hotel room,
okay.
He had a picture of his wife pinned up to the mirror.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I am kind of curious what you're talking about, because I don't remember seeing Debra Messing's Big Naturals in this.
I think my last two comments about the movie are we get to see how Connie's dream plays out with the bridge collapse, of course. The lights shining from below are all the cars, and wasn't it Christmas Eve?
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, the presents in the car, that's explained. And we hear that 36 people died, wake up number 37 when Richard Gere...
Yeah, that whole bridge collapse scene is traumatic as fuck. The first time, if you haven't seen it before,
it is.
It's a Final Destination quality death scene. Yeah, it's really it's like orchestration of the entire movie. So that way, like at this point, you've interviewed a lot of the people that are on that bridge. So like when the teenager with the red eyes and stuff like that, like that he's dying, and maybe that's the reason why he saw the Mothman. And it seems like the Mothman only presented themselves to the people that were going to die, except for Connie and John, the two characters that are kind of like the outsiders, the protagonists of this.
And they have the plot armor. That river water was pretty clear for something down the way from the chemical factory and the cement plant and the oil refinery and the...
It might have been downriver. So like the plant might have been on the other side of town.
You mean upriver? I found the picture.
You found it.
I found the picture.
All right.
Is it breastful?
Breastful. That's a great adverb.
It
actually is. Keith is not making things up.
Okay, good. Part of me is relieved. I don't have to worry about Keith just automatically like sexualizing a random picture of a woman wearing a turtleneck.
It's very light in the picture I just sent through, but you can see.
Yep, there you go. That's the back of it because we're seeing through the mirror in that picture. It's like someone is watching him through the mirror.
Oh, okay, right. Oh, yeah, because she's laying on her side. I do remember that photo. Yeah, she's laying on her side, so they're just giving her some artificial.
That's the remembrance photo that he has of his wife. Which,
I mean, and it's all also like the pillow look, like they're both in bed and he's laying next to her, so she's giving him the sweet look, So I get it.
Thank you, Reddit, for that picture.
Yeah. That makes more sense. Keith is not, but hey, you know what? Now I feel like we're being creeps about Debra Messing's breasts, and it's all your fault.
She's beautiful and perfect the way she is. How about that? I tried to save it. Tried to save it, and you just wouldn't let us.
I know. My is that I disagree with her on a few political things in the news over the last few years. That's where I physically, as far as her prettiness, she's fine. I'm not here to judge her looks. She's obviously attractive enough where she's been one of the more attractive women in recent memory. But that's why I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to vocally support Debra Messing too much because she and I are on opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to some political causes.
I'm just
not to get too political, but it affects
we were talking about her physical attributes when Keith said that.
Yeah, but it's like almost like if somebody said J.K. Rowling, she's pretty, right? I'd be like, fuck her. I don't care if she's pretty or not. Like at this point, she's just an ugly bigot. But anyways,
if it weren't for all the mold,
Yeah. Tweet again, Devin. Tweet again, JK. I meant tweet again. JK, don't do it.
The Green Goblin mask voice.
We might be a little past the time with that meme by the time this episode airs, but it's such a perfect meme.
I don't know. It's evergreen. Anyways. So I think it's interesting that you said that this movie sat with you, because my main critique of this movie is like, while I'm watching it, I'm kind of drawn in and I'm in it, and then it leaves my body when it's over, and I do not think about it, and it does not sit with me. But you kind of had the opposite experience, it seems. So I find
like that whole red eyes watching, like feeling a presence just outside, having premonition dreams. These are all things that, like, again, I'm a skeptic person, but if there were any like weird metaphysical phenomenon that I have experienced in my life, these line up with them. So there was some truth to, I wouldn't say truth, but it resonated with me a bit more. Somebody chasing me down the hallway with a knife, I've never been through anything quite like that. But I have had some very oddly specific and premonition dreams that afterwards I'm like, what the fuck? How did I dream this exact scenario? I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I've seen the Mothman or anything like that, but I've been half asleep and had conversations with entities in the room, and who knows how much of that is made up in your mind. And I'm not saying that I fucking had conversations with Indrid Cold, but there was enough of a resonance where I felt some truth to this story, and it made me look into it more. And I'm glad I did, because of it I learned about the Mothman. And even though the Mothman is not one of the more compelling metaphysical points of history, it is still interesting, again, because of, in my opinion, the existence of Indrid Cold, which, if y'all are ready, we can chat a bit about what really happened and what some people...
Yeah, I'm interested in that. Let's
so,
go.
According to a bunch of reports, and this is all everything starts with John Keel's book, what was it called? The Mothman Diaries or something like that. I forget what it was. It was called The Mothman Prophecies, yeah. And it was in 1975, and he wrote it over his last, the 5 years beforehand. He was a UFO investigator. He was a journalist for the Washington Post or something like that, a major publication, I forget which one. But basically, he found himself in Point Pleasant because he was investigating a UFO sighting potentially in the area, and then he found out that, according to his book, over 100 different witnesses had accounts of seeing the Mothman in various forms. Some of them were teenagers that they were in their car making out at Makeout Point or whatever it was called, and their car would start rattling and they'd see a bunch of red light outside, and then they'd see the Mothman standing next to their car looking in, and then it would fly away or something like that. Some of them damaged the shit out of their roofs that way. Adults in the area were thinking that these kids were just making up stories to try to get out of damaging their car while they were out making out, but then adults started seeing it too. And so after a good solid couple, what was it? I think they had some sightings 6 months prior to the bridge collapse, and then the sightings kind of died down a little bit, but people saw a few over the next 6 months. But then in the week leading up to the bridge collapse, people started seeing a lot more, and that's where the vast majority, 60 out of the 100 or something. And of course, I might be misquoting here, but this is just what I read briefly when I did a little bit of research. They saw more sightings of the Mothman leading up to the bridge collapse, and then after the bridge collapsed, nobody saw the Mothman in that area anymore, which that by itself is kind of creepy. That is, who knows what the fuck is going on. But to coincide with that is during that 6 month period, a man, I don't know, but a figure that looked like a man introduced themselves to several people in town, and it seemed like this person had singled out several people in town. I think there was 3 or 4 people that had talked to Indrid Cold, and that's how he introduced himself, was Indrid Cold. And the first time that he met somebody was a witness. I forget his name. Right, I should have this pulled up if you give me just a minute. Indrid Cold. Who did he talk to? Oh, Woodrow Derenberger. Woodrow Derenberger was a man that was driving down the road, and what he described as, it looked like the glass from a lantern landed in front of him on the road, and a door opened, and out stepped a man wearing a suit, a black business suit, and he had a very big, inhuman smile. He said that the smile looked like he was trying to be... he was trying to put people at ease, but the smile was much too big for a human face, and it was uncanny valley. But that the man, the human that saw him on the side of the road, felt compelled to pull over and talk to him, or maybe his car broke down and that's when the guy showed up or something like that. But either way, they talked on the side of the road, and he felt compelled to find out more about this man and help him. He was compelled to answer his questions, and he didn't know why, but he felt like he needed to have these conversations. So he invited him back to his house, and Indrid Cold, over the next few months, came back to the man's house a few times and talked to him. And Indrid Cold asked Woodrow about the city that they lived in. For example, one of the things that he didn't understand what the word city was. He kept using city, town, village, that kind of stuff. And Indrid Cold had no idea, any frame of reference for that. And eventually they found a common term, and it was gatherings. Oh, you mean like a gathering? Sure, whatever, that kind of thing. And so little things like that Woodrow remembered that were a little bit inhuman about this person that was talking to him. And I don't remember exactly, I didn't read the book. I didn't do that much investigation. This one, I'm not going to read a whole fucking book for a podcast, but sorry, I'm not that dedicated. We talked about obsession versus research, but yeah. So Indrid Cold stopped coming around after the Mothman left, after the Point Pleasant bridge collapse. And some people think that this person was an alien. Some people think that that the Mothman is a demon and that this person was an observer. I saw some people talking about how that the Mothman is a multidimensional observer, that you see these throughout history where they will find specific points in history. And some people have called them fear vampires or something like that, where they find major moments in history where a lot of people are dying or going through a major event, and they just show up and they feed off of watching the situation happen, whether it actually feeds them or they just enjoy it and it's fun for them. Nobody knows.
That's interesting. That's kind of like the Watcher in Marvel, or in the Dark Tower series, they find out that from the universe that the Dark Tower is in, it's like plays or movies. There's all these doorways that say like September 11th, 2001, and to the theater where Lincoln was shot, where they can go back and like they sell tickets to view these like horrible events that have happened throughout history.
So that's super compelling in itself. And some people surmise that when this entity came through to watch this major catastrophic event, people like Indrid Cold, that he wasn't there for the bridge collapse. He even said something along the lines of, I'm not here for what the Mothman is here for. I don't forget how, but they got the impression that he wasn't there for the bridge collapse. He just wanted to get to know the people in town and never asked any questions about that kind of stuff. He just wanted to understand human life and human qualities and stuff like that. And somebody surmised that, so the Mothman, this entity, breaks through the barrier to come into our dimension to watch this torture porn. And while that veil is weakened because somebody just came through it, anthropologists or their version of anthropologists come through to study human life, knowing that I have like 6 months till I can go back. I can come back and forth every once in a while collecting more data about these weird people known as humans.
Yeah, interesting.
And that is super compelling to me. That's why there's a lot of evidence about Indrid Cold. Oh, and the guy that did the Indrid Cold interviews, you would think that he would, why would he lie? He's probably doing it for attention. Well, he stopped giving interviews. He gave like 3 interviews about Indrid Cold and then immediately started seeing that people wanted to know more. And from that point on, for the rest of his life, he never once talked about Indrid Cold again. His family, after he passed, did a couple of interviews, and they said that he specifically said that we are not to share any information with you. He doesn't want to talk about Indrid Cold ever again. But he did not recant it, and he is not a liar. That really did happen, and even his kids and his grandkids or whatever all agree that this is something that really happened, and Dad just never talked about it again.
That's scary. That's scary.
Never ask us about it.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's a lot scarier.
That's scarier than insisting
he's
it happened.
got respect.
Yeah.
There's a respect between Woodrow and Indrid that, like, he was like, no, I'm going to honor your secrecy. I feel like I've said too much already. I'm not going to talk about this anymore.
Or a little fear, which respect and fear kind of go hand in hand in a certain level.
Or he's worried about being labeled a crackpot. He already was.
Or Indrid came back and told him, shut up.
Yeah. So either way, like, there is, Indrid Cold is one of those cryptids where there's not a ton of evidence, and just by the very nature of it, I don't think there would be a lot of evidence, but that's compelling as shit. And I don't know. And even then, and some people said, well, what about that lantern top landing? And that's where the whole idea of, like, well, humans don't know how to process something, so, like, our brains try to form the knowledge that we have around the event. And the way memories work, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but memories are like files that you resave. So, like, when you recall a memory, if you recall a memory and you're not sure, like, oh, I was driving down the road and this car drove in front of me and my friend and it was purple. Wait, was it purple or blue? I think it was blue. Next time you recall that memory, you are far more likely to recall the memory with a blue car driving in front of you. And the more you think about that blue car, then you ever wondered, you might read something that you wrote years ago about a purple car pulled in front of us and be like, no, it wasn't purple. I clearly remember it. It was blue. Brains are funky, and you refile memories and you pull out the latest version. You don't pull out the original version of your memory.
Right.
So he might have thought at the end of it, what the fuck was that? Well, it kind of looked like a lantern. And now from that point on, the rest of his life, he's fully being honest that it was a lantern that landed in front of him. That's what he believes because that's what his brain is telling him.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah. Any thoughts about the Indrid Cold Mothman cryptid shit?
I mean, I think, like I said, I think it's more scary and believable that the guy was shut up and clamped up about him than to go on loudly insisting that it was true. That feels, that makes the hairs on the back of my neck go up a little more in relation to it.
Yeah.
But the real question is, what is this movie's popcorn bucket?
Maybe it's just a regular
telephone?
popcorn bucket with a bunch of pictures of Debra Messing's boobs.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's just like a bust of
just cleavage.
It's just a bust of Debra Messing's big naturals full of popcorn.
Oh, it's one of those where it's perspective. The back of the box, like if you're looking at it, it's a cardboard 4-sided box. The back of it that stands up a little bit taller, it's got her face and her arms like around the side, and then the front of it is her boobs.
Yeah, perfect.
And you're reaching between her boobs and her face to get the popcorn.
We got it. We did it. We got there.
So the one thing.
Well.
The one thing that I introduced last week that I wanted to come back to too was, who was your MVP of this movie? Who's the one that stood out to you? Doesn't have to be the best actor. It doesn't have to be the protagonist. Doesn't have to be the most evil. Could be somebody that you thought was really fucking silly and it made no sense.
I'm gonna go with the professor just because he had that line that's like, if you try to explain yourself to a cockroach, the cockroach can't understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Like, as much as I downplayed the scientist, like he had a couple of good lines about like, you are no more, maybe they're no more advanced than us. Like that man up there on the washing the windows, he can see an accident coming from blocks away, but he's not smarter than us. He just has a different perspective. Like the way of thinking about multidimensional beings that way, that like they might not be any better or worse than you are. They've got a different perspective. Yeah, that's cool. What about you, Keith? Who was your MVP of the Mothman Prophecies?
I have an MVP and I have a runner-up, but the MVP for me is Gordon, played by Will Patton. I like that actor. He's like a great character actor. You see him all around in a lot of stuff, and he just has a real sort of down-home grit, folksiness about him that just like really is good at portraying. And,
his country accent feels very valid. I know a lot of people that talk with that pseudo country accent.
Yeah, and he always seems like a sort of legit guy that's a little on edge. And I don't know. I like seeing him, but my runner up is the Tibetan bowl music guy.
I was really waiting for it to be Debra Messing's big
we've mentioned those enough, I think, for the podcast, so I didn't want to bring it up again. But he when it cuts to that wide shot and I saw that, I think I might have audibly laughed because
me too, absolutely. Yeah, I'm right there with you that my runner up was definitely the guy that decided. I looked at it the other way, that the guy that decided to roll his computer to the middle of the sound studio to talk to his client. Everybody else in the studio like giving him the evil eye and waiting for him to leave, and as soon as the client leaves, they're like, "All right, Jim, what the fuck, man? Why are you doing your work? We're trying to record shit in here, dude." But really, my MVP is John for the way he closes that distance immediately to talk to Gordon. After the last interaction they had, he had a gun to his fucking chest, and now he's gonna like come up on him like in the middle of the street. Like that is ballsy as shit, bro. You got church bells under those.
Yeah, like he could smell. Gordon could smell what he had for breakfast. You know what I mean? Like
he literally could have licked his cheek. He licked. Yeah. All right. So now is at the time of the show where we're going to talk about our personal opinions and whether we like the movie. So let's start with Keith. Did you like the movie? Would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
You really want to do this? Here. Now, yes. Okay. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I do give it a thumbs up. It's a little bit of a wavy, weaker thumbs up. It's not really my favorite. And as I said, it doesn't sit with me. That's my main critique of the movie, is it doesn't follow me. It's a pretty good watch if you're interested in that kind of thing. But I could also see people being bored to death watching this. So I personally, this is like my third time watching it, I think. So it's a thumbs up. But I can totally see a clear line of critique in this movie and it not being an enjoyable experience.
So this is your third time and might be your last time, and you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I never saw the Mothman Prophecies again. But it's a well-crafted movie. There's some creepy stuff, so it's a thumbs up.
All right.
What about you, Kelley? What did you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Thumbs up from me. It is that it's a very secure thumbs up, but with, it's obviously got its problems, like a lot of movies that are our favorites. Like, it's not perfect by any means. I think to call back to what you were saying, I understand why it didn't stick with you as much because, like I said, because of personal experience and phenomenon I have experienced in my life, it resonated with me. And I think I've seen that in like reading the reviews for this movie and such, that like I understand those eyes watching from a distance. Like I understand the Mothman and having conversations with people that aren't there and yada yada. There's some of this that resonates really well with me, and because of that, it definitely stuck. A couple of the one-liners really stuck with me too, like the whole like, there you are, a happy couple, I've been looking for you. That ever since I've seen this movie, that resonates in my mind. Every time I'm really happy in life, I can hear, there you are, a happy guy, I've been looking for you. So yeah, so overall, definitely a thumbs up. Like, it wouldn't be the best movie I've ever seen, but it's a classic for Halloween. I watch it every year around spooky time just because I have to. What about you, Jamie? Would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I give it a qualified thumbs up, and the qualification being one time. Like, I was excited to watch it again because I'd seen it before. I did like it the first time through. I was bored this time. I got so bored in the middle of it that I just started making notes that looked like my own conspiracy theories, just trying to figure out who saw him and who was going to die and who was going to live, and it did bore me the second time through. Yeah, the beginning, it starts out really strong and it ends really strong, but that middle bit, it gets a little draggy. And it's a 2-hour movie. That's why I'm like, they could have made this an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes, and I think the movie would have been better off for it. But that's just my opinion. It didn't do well in the box office. It made 55 million, even though it cost 32. Let's see what the ratings are.
It's about middle of the road.
6.3.
Yeah, 5.5 out of 10.
IMDb.
52% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, so not really super well liked. Let's see. Roger Ebert wrote, Mark Pellington, whose command of the camera, pacing, and overall effect is so good, it deserves a better screenplay. Ooh, I could see that.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yep. And in Variety, Robert Kohler claimed, it wanders away from its sustained atmospherics into silly expository detours. Okay, I could see that too. That it just the feeling of it, the vibe of it is so strong that it feels like they kind of petered out at one point and then ended solid.
It's almost an excellent movie. Like, it's just on the cusp of being an excellent movie.
It is a solid, good movie. I don't really mind recommending this to somebody that hasn't seen it before. Like, watch it. The first time you'll have a great time. Right. Yep. Watching it a second and third time, you might want to have on your second screen watching Mothman while you're doing something else on your first screen. Yeah, so we apparently enjoyed that movie. It might not be the highest rated perfect that we could possibly give, but it was a 3 out of 3, so that's excellent. And next week we are continuing our Screamshare and Thrill series with Jamie's pick.
Need a lightning strike and a cackle when you say that every time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Don't worry, I'll add something in post other than like a rubber ducky. You know. So, do we know what Jamie is picking next week? Is it a surprise? Or are you sharing it with us to make us scared all week?
I will share it with you. I actually changed my mind when I pulled up the IMDb for this movie because it reminded me of another movie I love. We are going to be watching Stir of Echoes.
I had the same thought. It's a similar like type of movie. Okay, interesting.
Stir of
Echoes. And I love Stir of Echoes.
Have you seen that?
I have
Kelley?
never. I don't know if I have or not. Is it Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes, I think I may have seen it like a long time ago, and I saw it once, but it doesn't bring back a lot of memories, so this may be kind of like a first viewing with an asterisk. All right, well, that was us for the Mothman Prophecies. We had a really good time with it. Remember to support us on ko-fi.com/screenshare, where you can force us to watch a movie. You can subscribe when we have upcoming polls as to which movie we're going to watch next. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We might even be in your backyard. If you look back there and you see 2 red lights, you know that might be us. Yes, we're stalking all of our listeners. Like, we can afford to do that.
Eating your popcorn.
Out of your big-breasted bucket. Say that 10 times fast. All right, let's get out of here. For Screen Share and Chill, I'm Kelley.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Jamie.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't run into any Mothman out there, and don't get the brain tumors from hitting your head. Wait, that's not what happened.
Remove Gerbil before watching.
Remove Gerbil before watching. What if somebody put a warning label?
That's the subtitle.
You get back to the 90s and you put a little sticker on all the Mothman remove Gerbil before watching. Be kind, please remove Gerbil. All right, bye.
Bye.
If you don't stop this, I'm going to call the police. You go ahead, call them!
I didn't have any of my shut up. I didn't have any of my shut up.
You're always fresh out of shut up, though.